Hi, my name is Tim, Recovery Coach Tim. This is a short video specifically dealing with relapse. What are the symptoms, what are the stages, how does it work, things like that. Obviously, that's a segment of what happens to addicts or anybody that's trying to deal with bad habits or artificial ways they take care of themselves. All of it is a form of an addiction, and the relapse portion that I want to talk about is the stuff that people think comes prior to the acting out or the using out or the drinking out or the taking drugs out or whatever behavior is there, that these are the symptoms that go through. Obviously, people have different ways of participating in these categories, so I want to kind of go over them in a general way. It's kind of like what I call a 100-foot flyover. But the most important thing for an addict to realize is that they go through these stages, and sometimes, if not most of the time, they're not able to recognize these themselves. What that means is usually there's somebody that's your family member or somebody's close to you or somebody sees you in a meeting or somebody that is noticing some peculiarities or some situations. Kind of like happens in an AA meeting where you hear something of somebody that's been coming for the last 2, 3, 4 weeks or a couple of months, and then you hear that they've relapsed, that they've gone back out. And there's a part of us, a part of me that says, I'm not surprised. Well, what is it that makes me not surprised? What is it that I did see that I maybe wasn't willing to mention or talk about or identify? Those are the stages that I'm talking about here. That's the process. It's the subconscious part. It's part that probably the addict, probably the person that's going through it, is the least able to spot it. That's why we go to meetings. That's why we have sponsors. That's why we have recovery coaches. That's why we deal with this stuff, because very rarely do we really know that we're heading down the wrong path or we're heading into trouble. So just identifying those 100-foot flyover, that doesn't necessarily give you the skills of how not to participate. All it is a question of you deciding where you are and what are you going to do about it. Obviously, I consider it an energy portion, that when your energy starts going down, your energy starts lowering, you have the least ability to take care of yourself, so we've got to get our energy up. And the things that we've learned, to take some form of action, take some form of behavior, call your sponsor, go to a meeting, go for a walk, pause when agitated, deal with it, do some inventory, do some writing. All those are things that are designed to break this cycle or this trance. So that's the part that I'm talking about. The first stage that I actually call it reactivation, denial reactivation. That is that what that means is that you subconsciously reactivate your denial. And denial is not something that's a total whiteout. It's like a focus thing. It's like an energy or what's important to you. And people basically and that's what happens when people get in recovery. They get back to going to work. We call them switching chairs on the Titanic. They'll start focusing on a relationship. They start trying to heal their family situations. They maybe try to take care of some of the assets, their cars and houses. They start focusing on that, and which are necessary and need to get done. But the one thing they don't do is they don't spend the energy on the recovery, on keeping their energy up and fighting their addiction. And that is what I call denial reactivation. It's very passive, very subtle, very hard to diagnose yourself, relatively able to be diagnosed or seen by somebody else that's close to you. And that's what that category means. The next category is what you do called defocus on self. And what I mean by that is that you tend to start being distracted, and I think that's where codependency comes in. There's some people that say that, if you have an addict of any kind and you peel off the addiction, what's underneath there is a codependent. And a codependent is somebody that focuses on their circumstances and don't take care of themselves. So it isn't the focus on the circumstances that I'm talking about, is that it's the inability to take care of yourself. You start eating a little bit different, you don't sleep very well, you're not maybe going to your meetings, you're maybe not calling your sponsor, those things, and they're always explained by a focus on your circumstances, which is you end up not taking care of yourself. And that's what I mean by the defocus on yourself. And that's one of the things that it can be very destructive. The next thing is what I call a crisis or crisis buildup. And this is more of a symptom. What that means is that you're focusing on something, you're not taking care of yourself, and of course the stuff that you're not taking care of starts influencing your life, starts making you do so. So in essence, those concerns start going up. You start working a little harder, a little extra. All of a sudden your relationship with your spouse or your mate or your family may deteriorate. Or you're focusing on your family and maybe your work may deteriorate. But anyway, that's what we mean by the crisis buildup. When you're not taking care of business, when you're not doing a harmony or a balanced approach to your life, then the things that you aren't taking care of start bothering you, start pestering you. Maybe your salary and wages go down. Maybe things, family promises to kids to go to a ball game or go exercise or go for a picnic, things like that. Those are the things that start coming up, and all of a sudden, you got the looks from your family, you got the looks from your boss, you look at yourself and you're not taking care of yourself, maybe you're gaining a little weight, blah, 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 blah. But those are the things, it's one of the passive or covert symptoms of a relapse, is that you have a crisis buildup. And that's next stage is what we call immobilization. And what I mean by that is you become almost paralyzed, you become stuck, become overwhelmed, you start beginning to back out. Obviously a little fear comes in, lots of fear comes in, things aren't working, you've been making lots of vows and promises to do certain things and those aren't getting done. So that's the kind of stuff that we're worried about. So that's what we're talking about, immobilization. It's the ultimate immobilization of an addiction is like a person that just can't make a decision. Their body's reversed, their intellect is wiped out, they're run by their emotions. And I've even heard people that get to a four-way stop driving a car and they can't move. They can't make a decision which way to go. They can't go straight, they can't back up, they can't turn left, they can't turn right. They just don't have the ability to make a decision because the intellectual part of their relapse has caused them to not be available to them. They have to make poor decisions, and we call that immobilization. That's kind of a fancy way of saying you're beginning to freeze up and panic a little bit. The loss of control is the next stage. And that's, of course, self-explanatory, but it's a symptom that says that as you become immobilized and as these other crises come in, they start taking over more and more of your emotional self, your subconscious self, and you start losing your ability. Your temper will rise, your agitation will rise, your lack of sleep, you'll be tired, and of course AA calls it the halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Those things will rush in, and you'll begin to start building yourself up to depression, building yourself up to a drink. Some people call it even a bud. But this is when it becomes pretty evident, and most people will see that coming. The next, of course, is the clinical description, of which we call depression. And in a simple form, that's basically anger or fear or frustration that's stuffed into it, that's buried, that's swallowed, that's kind of swallowed alive, buried alive, if you want to call it. Anger internalized is primarily what psychiatrists and people that study depression look at that. Of course, it starts the dis-ease of the body, and that's where disease comes from, and so forth. So they're interrelated. But there is a depression stage, and lots of times a person that's in depression, the relief that they need from the depression is, starting for the relapse, is a loss of behavior. And technically, that means that your focus on taking care of yourself, your ability to actually act properly, to behave properly, it starts to go, and there's kind of a panic that sits in, a subconscious panic, subconscious fear that comes in, and there's no question that that stage is something like that. And of course, the next stage is the actual loss of control. And then the last one, which I'll jump to, is you'll actually have a sense of losing everything that's important to you. You'll become desperate. You'll actually, the way Father Martin said in his what we call chalk talk, that a normal situation is where your intellect is over your emotions, and in this situation it reverses. And so your emotions are controlling your intellect, and you become debilitated. You become out of control. Powerless is the main thing, and you actually will only thing that will work is some sort of relapse, be it behavior, be it substance, be it relationship, or whatever it is. That's the chronic part of it, and that's the part that I like to emphasize on. Debilitation. And by that time, you're already in trouble. And the chances of you using, acting, doing is probably very small. It's just a matter of time. And of course, that stage can last very small. But anyway, these are the stages I talk about, the relapse. Obviously, as they get further down the line, they pick up energy, they go faster. And sometimes you can go through those stages in a matter of hours, maybe even minutes. But at least it's good to talk about these things and to address them. And maybe you can recognize them and spot them as somebody you sponsor, somebody you're close to, somebody you care about. And then we've got to learn on the skills of what you do about them. That'll be the next tape. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much.